What's up YouTube, welcome to CodAffection. In this video we will cover the part 2 for Master Detail CRUD Operations with Angular 7 and ASP.NET Web API. Please watch part 1 before this video. I have given the link in first comment and video description. Before starting this video, I would like to ask you a favor. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. If you are new here, please be subscribed to this channel and click on the bell icon to get notification about my new videos. Most of the video lesson here also has a written blog post. You can find the link in video description. You can grab code from there as well. So far we have done insert, update and delete operation around this order food items table here. Like this, we can add as much as food items we need. At the same time, we have to update this grand total here. So let's look how to do that. For that, I'm going to define a new function inside this order component here. So here we have the function update grand total. Inside this function, we have to sum up these totals inside this table. That means we have to get sum of total property from this order service class array order items. For that, we can do this. Here we have injected this service as service property. Inside that, we have this order items array. From this function, we are going to call this reduce function. Inside that, we will have a reducer function. It has two parameters, previous and current. As a second parameter, I will pass 0. So this is what happens when we call reduce function on an array. Here we have the arrow function. It is also called as reducer function. This reducer function will be invoked on each item inside this array from left to right. Means from 0th index to the last index. Current element will be the inside this second parameter here, and with this second parameter here we have initialized this previous parameter. Inside this function we just need to do this return previous plus current. Inside this variable we have the current element from the array. Inside that we have this total property. So for each element we will call this reducer function. Initially this previous parameter will have 0. Into that, on each function execution we will add this total property. After all, we can save that sum result into the grand total. So we can do this dot service dot form data dot grand total or g total. Finally, I want to limit number of decimals inside this float number that we have already done inside this order items component here. So let me copy this and pasting here, and then let's make the required changes. Now we have to call this update grand total function whenever we make change inside this table. That means whenever we add or update items inside this array. So we can call this function inside this on delete order item function, which is invoked whenever we delete a selected food item from this table. So we can do this dot update grand total. We have one more situation to call this function update grand total, which is when we close this pop-up window after insert or update operation for the order food item. So how can we know whether we close this pop-up dialog from this order component? We have called this open function here inside add or edit order item function, and this function returns an object of mat dialog ref, which is a reference to the opened dialog. So we can do this from the return reference object. We can call this after close function and it returns an observer. So we can subscribe to that function here. Inside that we can add this callback function so that this callback function will be invoked whenever we close the window or pop-up dialog. And here we can call this update grand total function. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Let's try to add a new food item for this order. submit. So here we have updated the grand total. Let me add one more item. So here we have updated the grand total again. Now let's delete a selected food item. We have to update the grand total at the same time. So here we have updated grand total also. So here we have done with operations related to order food item. Now, like we have populated this food item drop down here, we have to populate this customer drop down here. So let's look how we can do that. For that, here we have this customer service class. Inside this constructor, we have to create a property of the type HTTP client. HTTP, it's of the type HTTP client class. In order to retrieve customer table rows, we have to call this customer controller web API method get customers. It will be almost similar to this item service class function get item list. So let me copy this and let's paste that inside this customer service class. We have to name this function as get customer list, and we have to add this environment import statement. So hold control, then press period or dot symbol, then select the corresponding import statement. Now we have to update the corresponding web API method. Here we have the base address. Into that we have to append /customer. Now let's call this get customer list function inside this order component here. That we can do inside this ng on a lifecycle hook here. First of all, we have to create a private customer property for the customer service class. Private customer service, it's of the type customer service class. We have already done the similar thing in order list items, so we can do this dot customer service dot get customer list function can be called. From that function we have returned a promise, so we can call this then function here. Inside that we have this arrow function or callback function. Here we just need to save this response array into a property, so I will add the array here customer list, it's of the type customer model class array. This dot customer list is equal to response, and we have to cast this as a customer array object or list. Now let's display items from this array inside this customer drop down here. We will add an option tag here, and inside that we have to iterate through the array, so we can add this ng4 directive here. ng4 is equal to let item for customer list. Inside this value attribute we have to show corresponding customer ID that we can do using string interpolation. So item dot customer ID, and for the option text we will do this item dot inside this model customer we have name property, so we have to use name property here also. Let me save all of these modifications. Sorry, instead of for, here we have to use of. In some cases I will mess up with this ng4 syntax. So with this customer function get customer list, we will fetch all the customer records. Sorry, here we have misspelled customer URL. We have to add this R. So this function will fetch all the customer records from our web API project, and we will show that inside this customer drop down here. Let me save all of these modifications. Back to the application here. Now let's expand the customer drop down. That's it. So here we have the customer records which we have already inserted using SQL scripts. Now inside this master detail form we have prepared everything for master and details part. Now let's submit the form. Before that I want to implement form validation inside this master form here. We have two validations. First of all, there should be a selected customer from this dropdown, and there should be at least one food item selected for the order. So let's implement this validation. I will define the same property is valid. It's of the type boolean, and I will initialize that with true. Now let's define a function for validating the form. So here we have the function validate form. First of all, I will set the boolean to true. Is valid, and I will set it as true. First of all, there should be a selected customer, so we can do this dot service dot form data dot customer ID. If it is equal to 0, means there is no selected customer. In that case, we will set this boolean value is valid as false, means validation fails. And we have the else if block here. Inside that, we have to check whether we have a selected food item for this order. For that, you can use the order service property or array here, order items. The length of this order should be greater than 0. If it is 0, we can say that there is no food item selected for the order. So we can do this. Let me copy this here and pasting here. Instead of form data, we have order items dot length property can be checked. If it is equal to 0, we can set this same boolean value as false. Finally, from this function, we can return this boolean, this dot is valid. Now we have to call this validate form function when we submit the form. For this form here, we have not wired up a submit event, so let's do that. So here we have the submit, and when we submit this form, we will call this function on submit function. Into that function, we will pass this form local reference. Now let's define this function on submit inside the TypeScript file here. On submit with a single parameter form, it's of the type ng form. First of all, we have the if clause. Inside that, we will call this function validate form. This dot validate form function can be called. When the function returns true, then only we will post the form data into Web API project. Otherwise, validation fails. In those cases, we have to show validation error indication inside this form here. For that, we can do the same that we have done inside this details form here. So open corresponding HTML, order component HTML, then open this order items. Inside that, we have already done that indications. So let me copy this conditional is valid statement from here, and we can do that same for this customer drop down here. The condition will be different here. Service.formData.customer ID is 0 and this property is not true. In those cases, we will apply this is invalid class. Now we have to show validation error indication when we have no food item selected for the order. In that case, I will change the text color of this no data row. So back to the table, let me copy this from here. And I will apply this class for this tr element here. Instead of this class, we have to use text hyphen danger. It will apply a red text color. And here we have to change this condition. Inside this service, we have this array order items array. And when its length is equal to 0 and this is valid is false, we will apply this text danger class to this row, no data row here. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Let's try to submit this form with default data. So here we have the validation error indication for customer and for this no data row here. Now let's provide values for mandatory fields for this form. Let's select a customer and let's add a food item. So here we have a valid form. Now we have to submit this form into the Web API project here in order to insert a new order. So let's look how we can do that. In order to insert a new order, we have to post form data into this order controller post Web API method post order. Inside this post order Web API method, we have to insert records into master table, which is here order table, and we have to insert records into this table also, details table order items. So we have to update this Web API method. Here we have the model validation. We don't need that. We have done that in client side. First of all, I want to enclose these codes here with a try catch. Exception parameter will be EX, and we will throw that exception with this statement here. I want to move all of these codes into the try block. Let me cut this and paste it here. For this Web API method, we have a single parameter order of the type order model class. Inside that, we have the properties corresponding to master table columns. Along with that, you can see a collection of the type order items. So using this order model object order, we can pass both master and details data from this client side app here. Inside this function, first of all, we will do the insert operation for order table here. After that, we have to insert records into order items table. For that, we are going to use for each loop here. Var is of the type item. From the collection, we have the collection inside this order model here, which is order items. So we are going to iterate through the collection here. Order dot order items. It will contain food details selected for the order inside this details table here. On each iteration, we have to add this item object into order items DB set. So we can do this db dot order items dot add function can be called. Into that, we can pass this item object. We will just return OK from here. In order to apply these new changes, let's build this project again. Now from this Angular application, we have to post this form data, both master and details, into this Web API method here, post order. So let's look how we can do that. For that, open order service class here. In order to make the HTTP request, we need an HTTP client object. So let's add the property here, private HTTP. It's of the type HTTP client. Now let's define a new function, save or update order. With this function, we will do the save and update operation. For now, we can do the save operation. We will do the update operation in a bit. We just need to call this Web API method here, post Web API method. So we can do this dot HTTP dot post function can be called. As a first parameter, we have to pass the corresponding URI. So environment. Let's add the corresponding import statement dot API URL, and we have to append this /order. As a second parameter, we have to pass an object for this parameter here, order. It should contain both master and details record. So let's look how we can pass both in a single object. For that, first of all, I will define this variable body. First of all, I will add the master details, which is inside this form data property. So we can use the destructuring syntax from JavaScript, this dot form data. After that, we have to provide the details part, means food item details selected for the order inside this table here, that we have saved inside this order items array. So we can do this dot order items. But we have a problem. in order to bind these data into this web API parameter order, we have to provide the same property name as that of this collection here, order items. Okay, so let me copy this and I will send this details part with this property name order items. Now we can pass this body as a second parameter to this post function here. This post function will return an observable. So from this service class function, we can return that observable from here. Now let's call this function inside the form submit event in order component here. This dot service dot save or update order function can be called. It returns an observable, so we can subscribe to that here. Inside that we have this callback function with a single parameter response. After the successful insertion, we can call this reset form function in order to reset the form controls to their initial state. Now let's save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Finally, let's make our first order. First of all, let's select the customer. Suppose Liam Patrick and his girlfriend came to this restaurant and made some orders. First of all, they had chicken tender, quantity will be 2, submit, and then they had sweet potato fries, quantity will be 1, submit, and finally they need some drinks. Finally, this order cost around $10. They made the payment through card and the employee at the counter submitted this form. Since form is reset to its initial state, the order must have been saved successfully. Let's check our database here. Here we have the master table order. Right click on it, then select top 1000 rows. So here we have the corresponding master record for the order, and let's check the details table order items. And here we have the 3 food items selected for the order. So finally we have made a successful order. After a successful order, we have to redirect this user into this route /orders, where we have the orders component, which we have defined inside this route in route module here. App route module, here we have the orders route, and here we have the orders component. So inside this component, orders component, we have to list orders that we have made so far. Before that, inside this form here, after a successful insert or update operation, I want to show a notification saying order is submitted successfully. For that, we are going to use this npm package ngx toaster. Let's search for this package ngx-toaster. So here we have the installation command. Let's copy this and then back to the application here. Let me open one more terminal and let's paste that npm command here. Hit enter. So here we have installed this package successfully. After that, we have to install this package Angular animations, which we have already installed as part of Angular material. After that, we have this package style sheet toaster.css, which is inside the folder directory node modules, then ngx toaster folder. So we have to add this style sheet reference inside the angular.json file. So let me copy this reference from here, then open angular.json file. And let's search for the styles array here. Now we can paste that here. Now we have to configure this Angular application for this ngx toaster. Open app.module.ts file here. First of all, let's add the import statement for this toaster module. Now let's copy this import statement. Then back to the application. Let's paste that import statement here. Now let's add this module inside this imports array here. And we have to call this for root function from that. Now let's look how to show a notification using this toaster module from our order component here. For that, first of all, we have to create a toaster service property inside this constructor here. So here it is, private toaster. It's of the type toaster service class. Now let's add the import statement. Now we just need to do this inside the submit event here. We can do this dot toaster dot success function can be called. As a first parameter, I will show this message submitted successfully. As a second parameter, we can pass the title for this notification. For that, I will use the application name restaurant app. Like we have discussed, after submitting this form, we have to redirect this application into orders route, where we have to list all of the inserted orders. In order to redirect this application, first of all, we have to inject router inside this component. So private router, which is of the type router class here. Then we can do this dot router dot navigate function can be called. Inside that, we can specify the required route inside this array here, /orders. Now let's look how this application looks like after these updates. First of all, we have to save all of these modifications here. Since we have made modification outside this src folder here, which means we have made modification inside this angular.json file. In order to see the updates, we have to restart this server. So use the shortcut Ctrl+C, then type Y, and we have to re-execute this command ng-serve --o. After the successful restart, back to the application here, we have to make one more order. Now let's select the customer. I will select Aisha Amir. Now let's make few orders here. Order is paid through cash. Now let's submit the form. So here we have successfully made the order, and here we have the notification from ngx toaster. Now let's check our SQL Server tables here. Let's execute this select statement again. Master ID will be 2, and here we have the details table, and here we have the last order details record. Inside this order ID we have the master ID 2, and here we have the food selected for the order and quantity. Inside the master table we have the customer ID, order number, payment method, and grand total for this order. Now back to the application here. Now inside this orders component we have to list orders that we have made so far. For that, we have to consume this web API method inside this order controller get orders. From this web API method, we have to return master details of the order, which we can retrieve from this order table here. Along with these columns, we have to return customer name instead of customer ID. For that, we have to join this order table with this customer table here. So let's look how we can do that using LINQ expression. So back to the web API method get orders here. So first of all, I will define a new variable here, var result. And here we have to write the LINQ expression from A in db.orders join with B in db.customers. On the basis of this condition, a.customer ID equals b.customer ID. After this join operation, we can select the required columns from this join result. So new object, first of all we have the order ID, and then we have the order number, then customer name from customer table b.name, Then we have payment method. Finally, we have the grand total. I want to return this customer name as customer. So we can give this alias name here, customer, and I want to enclose this whole LINQ expression in a pair of brackets. And finally, we have to call this toList function, toList. Now we can return this result from this web API method. Here we have the problem with return type of this web API method. So I will change that into system.object. Now let's build this application. Then back to the Angular application here. Then open order service class. Now let's define a function to retrieve all of those records. It would be similar to this customer service class function here. Let me copy that and pasting here. And let's make the required changes here. We have the function get order list. Corresponding URL will be like this, API/order. So instead of /customer, we have /order. From this function, we have returned a promise. Now let's call this function inside this orders component here. First of all, we have to create a private property of the service class order. So private service, it's of the type order service class. In order to save those orders, I will define a new property here, order list. Inside this ng only lifecycle hook here, we can do this dot service dot get order list function can be called. From that function, we have returned a promise. So we can call this then function here, and here we have the callback function. Inside that, we just need to do this dot order list is equal to response. That's it. Now using this collection order list, we have to list all of the orders inside this orders component HTML here. Instead of this default text here, we need a table with classes from Bootstrap, table, then table hyphen hover. Inside that, we have thead with class thead light. It will apply a background color for this thead. First of all, we have the order number. So I will add this title here, order number. Like this, we have to add 4 more th elements. So let me copy this and pasting below that 4 times. Here we have customer name. So I will type the title as customer. Then we have payment method. Then we have grand total. And this last column will be for action button. So I will leave it as empty here. After this thead part, we have tbody. Inside that, we have this tr element. And inside this tr element, we have to iterate through this collection property order items. For that, we are going to use this ng4 directive here. Star ng4 is equal to let item of, let me copy this property order list and pasting here. First of all, we have order number. We want to highlight that column, so I will use th here, and here we have the string interpolation item dot order number. After that, we have td cells for remaining columns, item dot customer. Let me copy this and pasting below that 2 times. Here we have payment method, and then here we have grand total. Finally, we have the td cell for action buttons. Let me save all of these modifications here. And back to the application here. Boom. So here we have the orders that we have made so far. Now let's add a navigation between these routes, orders and order. First of all, inside this orders table, inside this th part here, I will add an anchor element. So here we have the anchor element with classes from Bootstrap, btn, then btn hyphen outline hyphen success. Inside that, we have to show the text create new. Create new. Along with that, we have to show the phone awesome icon, I dot far, then far hyphen plus hyphen square. Now when we click on this hyperlink, we have to navigate into the route /order, which is the form for adding new orders. So we can do this, we can add this router link attribute here, and I will set it as /order. Let me save all of these modifications. Back to the application here. Let's navigate the /orders route, and here we have the button. Click on this. So here we are inside the order route. Now let's add a navigation from this form into this list here. For that, I will add a button next to this submit button here. So I will just copy this hyperlink from here, and we can reuse that inside this order form here. Now let's make the required changes. First of all, let's update the classes here. Instead of this btn outline success, we need btn outline dark. Since we have two elements side by side, let's add a left margin. So we can use this ml-1 class from Bootstrap. Instead of this route, we have to use /orders route. Instead of this icon, we have to use far-table. Instead of this text, we will show this view orders. Save this, then back to the application. So here is the button. If you click on that, here we are inside the orders route. Now we have to do update operation for these orders here. For that, first of all, we have to add an option for users to select an order for update operation. We will implement that using the click event for these cells here, except the last one. Inside that, we need a delete button to delete an order. And when we click on that, we will open this form. When we open this form for update operation, we have to populate these form controls with corresponding selected order from this list here. In order to select a record for update operation, we can use the route that we have defined inside this routing module here, edit/id. So open orders component HTML. For these cells here, let's add a click event. So we can add this click event here, click. When we click on these cells here, we will call another function, open for edit. Into that function, we will pass the order ID. So we can do this, item.order ID can be passed. Now let's define this function open for edit inside the TypeScript file here with a single parameter order ID. It's of the type number. From this function, we just need to navigate this route here for edit operation. For that, first of all, we have to inject router class here, private router. It's of the type router class. And then we can do this dot router dot navigate function can be called. Inside that, we have this array with this route /order /edit / and here we have to concat the order ID. That's it. As per the routing configuration, this route also calls this component order component. Inside that, we have already implemented insert operation. Now let's look how to update this component for edit operation. Inside this component, we have to retrieve the router parameter ID value that we have sent as part of the order selection for update operation. Here we have called this navigate function, and here we have passed this order ID. Now we have to retrieve this value of order ID from this component here. In order to retrieve such router informations, we have to inject activated router class here. So here we have the property private current route. It's of the type activated route. Now inside this ng on a lifecycle hook, we can do this. Let order ID is equal to this dot current route dot snapshot dot param map. It's a property. From that we can call this get function, and we have to retrieve the value of the router parameter ID. So based on the value of this order ID, we can decide whether we have a insert or update operation. If the value of this order ID is null, we have an insert operation. If order ID is equal to null, then we will do the insert operation. So that is why we call this reset form function. Otherwise, we have to do that inside this else block. We have to populate corresponding form properties that we have defined here inside order service. We have to populate these two properties, form data and order items, based on the item selected for the update operation. Using this order ID, we can retrieve details of a given order. For that, we can call this web API method getOrder. For this web API method, we have this ID, which is the order ID for the corresponding order. Using this order ID, we have to retrieve both master and details part, which is exactly similar to these properties here, form data and order items. For that, we have to entirely update this web method here. So let me get rid of this default text in it. First of all, we have the master detail order. Now let's write the LINQ expression from a in db.orders, where we have to select the corresponding record using the order ID, where order ID is equal to ID parameter, which is the order ID, and from this we have to select few columns, a dot order ID, then we have order number, and then we have customer ID, then we have payment method, finally we have the grand total. Finally, let's enclose this LINQ expression in a pair of brackets, and then let's call this first or default function. So this will be similar to this property form data. Now we have to retrieve the food items selected for the order. This array is of the type this model class order item. Inside that we have these much properties, and we have to retrieve these details from this details table order items. Inside that we have these much columns only. So in order to retrieve these details like item name and price, we have to join this table with item table here. So let's write the LINQ expression here. Var order details is equal to from a in db dot order items join with b in db dot items table. On this condition, a dot item ID equals b dot item ID, and we have to retrieve such records where a dot order ID is equal to ID, which means the order ID that we have passed from the client side. And here we have to select few properties. Select new First of all, we have order ID, and then we have order item ID, which is the details ID. Then we have item ID, which is the food item ID. And then we have food name or item name, which is inside the second table items. So we can do this b dot name. And we have to use this alias name here because inside this model class you can see item name. So we have to use this same name here. After that, food price. So b dot price. And then we have quantity. After that, we have total. So we have to calculate that from price and quantity. So a dot quantity into b dot price. Now let's enclose this LINQ expression in a pair of brackets. And finally, we have to call this function toList. Now we have to retrieve these details from this web API method. So we can do this return, and we will call this OK function. Inside that, we have to return a new object, anonymous object. Inside that, we will pass these two details, order, then order details. Now let's build this project. Back to the Angular application here. In order to call the web API method, let's add a new function inside this order service here. Function will be almost similar to this one here. So let me copy this and pasting here. So here we have the function with name getOrder by ID. For this function, we have a single parameter ID of the type number. And we have to call this web API method here, getOrders. For that, we have to use this URI here. So into this URL, we have to append this ID here. From this function, we have returned a promise. So we can call this function inside this order component ng on a lifecycle hook here. So we can do this dot service dot get order by ID. Into that, we have to pass this order ID, and we have to pass this ID as integer pass int. This function returns a promise, so we can call this then function here, and here we have the callback function with single parameter response. All the required properties are sent from the web API method, so we just need to do this dot service dot form data. Here is the master detail, and we can set that here response dot. From this web API method, we have returned master detail with this property name order. After that, we have order details. Let me copy this and pasting below that. Here you can see the red squiggly line. It is because of the type mismatch. In order to avoid this error, we can set the return type of this function as any. So here we don't have any error. Let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Now let's select this order for update operation. Boom. So here we have the corresponding order details inside this form. Inside this same form, we have implemented insert operation. Now we have to implement update operation. For that, we have to make few more changes inside the form. First of all, inside this form, we have to add an input element for the master ID, order ID, which we have not added. We don't need that for insert operation, but we need that for update operation. So let's add that input hidden field here. Input of the type hidden. For this, we have to add these name, local reference, and data binding. So let me copy this and pasting here. Then we have order ID. Now let's change remaining properties also. Now back to this populated form here. inside this details part we have to make few more changes. During insert operation, inside this details table we have one type of records. Means all of the records added into this table should be added into this details table order items. While in case of update operation, we have three types of records. First type, we have food items which we have added during insert operation. And second type, we have selected a new food item for this order. So this is the second type of the records. This is a new record which should be added when we submit the form. These records are already there, and we have the third type. For delete operation, we can delete newly added record, this one, or we can delete previously added record which we have already inserted into this table during insert operation. So inside this form, we have to store deleted food items which we have already inserted into this table. Then only we can delete that same record when we submit the form into the web API method inside this order controller. So in order to keep a track of deleted order items which we have already inserted inside this order items, and during update operation we have deleted those food items. So we have to track those records IDs inside this application. For that, I'm going to add one more property inside this order model here. So here is the property deleted order item IDs. It's of the type string. Inside this string property, we will have deleted order item IDs separated with a comma. In order to add deleted order item IDs, we have to update this delete button click event. So back to this component, order component, inside that we have an error because of the new property. Inside this object, we have to provide the value of the new property deleted order items. I will set it as empty string. Now let's update this function on delete order item function, which is wired up to this button click event. So here we have the unused parameter order item ID. Now let's use that parameter. First of all, we will check whether the value of this parameter order item ID is null or not. If it is not null, means this order food item is already inserted into this order items table. So we have to add the corresponding ID into the new property here. So here it is, this dot service dot form data dot deleted order item IDs. Into that we are going to concat this new order item ID. So we can do this order item ID. Finally, I will add this comma at the end for the next deleted ID. So these are the changes required in client side. Let me save all of these modifications here. From the form submit event, we have posted all the required data into the web API method. So we have to update this web API method post order. Inside that we have already done the insert operation. We will do the update operation inside the same web method. So we don't need this put method here, which is specially added for update operation by scaffolding mechanism. So let's get rid of this web method. Instead, we can do the update operation inside this post order web method. First of all, we have the order table. We will do the insert operation if the ID, master ID is 0. That means we can do this if order dot order ID is equal to 0, means we can do the insert operation. Otherwise, we have to do the update operation. In order to update the master details using entity framework, we just need to do this db.entry function can be called. Into that we can pass this order object, and we just need to update this state property like this, entity state dot modified. Now inside this for each loop, we have the details part. Like we have done for master part, we have to do the same for details part also. So I will add the if clause here. Inside that we will do this if item dot order item ID. If it is equal to 0, we will do the insert operation for details table. Otherwise, we have to do the update operation for details entry. So let me copy this and pasting here. Instead of order, we have item. After all of these insert and update operation, we have to delete order items if there is any deleted record. So we are going to do delete operation for order items. For that, from this Angular application, we have sent a string containing details of deleted IDs inside this form data, deleted order item IDs. But inside this Web API model order, we don't have a such property. We have to add that property in order to receive the value of this property in this Web API method. So I will add this property here. Let me copy this. Let's add a property. It's of the type string, and here we have the name. Inside the master table order, we don't have a column with this name deleted order item IDs. We just added this property in order to receive deleted item IDs from the client side. Now, in order to avoid the mismatch between entity model and SQL Server DB columns, we can add this attribute not mapped. For that, we have to use this namespace data annotations.schema. Now back to the Web API method. Here, I'm going to add a for each loop. Here we have the parameter ID, and here we are going to iterate through the deleted IDs. So we can do this order dot deleted order item IDs. Inside that, we have separated IDs with commas. So we have to split this using this comma character. It will return an array containing deleted IDs. As a last item inside the array, we will have an empty element. In order to filter that, we can do this. Here we have the verb function. Inside that, we have this arrow function with parameter x, where x is not equal to empty string. We have this where condition here because when we delete an item from details table here, we have added an extra comma at the end. So here it is. So when we split the string with comma, we will have an empty element at the end. In order to avoid that, we have added this where condition here. Now inside this for each loop, we can do this order item x is equal to db dot order items dot find function can be called. Inside that, we have to provide this ID. So first of all, we have to convert that into 64-bit integer. Convert to int 64. Inside that, we can provide this ID. So here we have the corresponding order item, which is deleted from the client side part here. In order to delete the corresponding record, we can do this db dot order items dot remove function can be called. Into that, we can pass the corresponding object x. So that's it. Here we have updated this Web API method for update operation. Since we have added this new master property, deleted order item IDs, we have to send the value inside this web method also, which is here get order. We have to send the corresponding value here with empty string. Let me build this project again. Then let me save all of these modifications inside this Angular project. Then back to the application here. So here we have reloaded this edit URL and it populated corresponding order details. Now let's try to update few details from this order. I will change this payment method to cash. Now let's delete this food item from this order. Before submitting this form, let's check what are the existing details about this order. Now here we have the order ID. Now let's check the SQL Server DB tables. Currently payment method is cash, and inside this details table for this order we have 3 details record. Now let's submit the form. So here we have the success message and we have updated this order list here. Now let's check corresponding master details tables. Let me execute this command again. So here we have the updated values. Inside this details table we have 3 records for this order with ID 1. Let's execute this again. So here we have 2 details record for the order. So here we have successfully implemented update operation for the advanced master details form. Now let's look how we can delete an order. For that, first of all, I will update this web API method here, delete order. Into that we have to send the order ID or master ID of the order. So here we have the order object order. Into that we can save this db.orders single or default function can be called, and here we have the condition for selecting corresponding record. So x where x dot order ID is equal to this given ID here. So after executing this expression here, master details will be filled inside this order object. Along with that, we have to populate this collection for details part here, order items. In order to populate corresponding details part inside this collection, we have to do this. We will call this include function before this single or default function here. Include, here we have the arrow function y such that order item IDs to be populated. So by calling this include function, corresponding details part will be populated inside this order items property of this order class here. Here we have already done the delete operation for master record. Now let's delete details records. For that I will use this for each loop here, item, and we have to retrieve the collection here, order items, and we have to call this toList function here. Inside that we can do this db.orderItems.remove function can be called. Into this function we have to pass this item variable. So here we have done with delete web API method. Let me build this project. Then back to the Angular application here. We have to add a button for delete operation inside this last TD cell here. So open corresponding HTML orders component. Now let's add a new hyperlink here. For that I will just copy this anchor element from here and let's paste that inside this last cell here. Now let's update these classes here. We have btn. After that we have this class text hyphen danger. We don't need this router link attribute here, and we want to change this font awesome icon for hyphen trash, then for hyphen lg. We don't need this text here. Now let's add a click event for this button. Click, and we will call this function on order delete. Into this function we have to pass this order ID. Let me copy this and pasting here. Now let's define this function inside the TypeScript file here. For this function we have a single parameter ID. It's of the type number. In order to invoke this delete web API method here, I'm going to add a new function inside the order service class here. It will be almost similar to this one. So let me copy this and pasting here. Function name will be delete order. From HTTP object we have to call this delete function. For this function we have a single parameter ID. It's of the type number. For this web API method we have to use this URI here. So we can do this /order/ then we have to append the ID here. From this function we have returned a promise. Now we can call this function here. This dot service dot delete order function can be called. Into that we have to pass the ID. From this function we have returned a promise, so we can call this then function here, and here we have the callback function. After a delete operation, we have to refresh this order list here. For that, we can use the same code here. Instead of copying this code here, I will define another function, refresh list. Into that, we can just move this code here. Let's cut and paste here. Let's call this same function inside this ng on the lifecycle hook, refresh list. Now we can call this same function inside this promise callback function. After all, we have to show ngx toaster notification. So first of all, we have to create a property inside this constructor of the type toaster service. Toaster, which is of the type toaster service class. And here we can do this dot toaster dot warning function can be called, and here we have the toaster message deleted successfully. As a title, I will set the application name restaurant app. Since delete is a loss of data, we have to confirm this operation from client side. So I will add this if clause here, and we will call this confirm function. Inside that we have this question, are you sure to delete this record? Now let's enclose this whole code inside this if clause. Let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Now let's delete this order. Click on this trash icon, and here we have the confirm dialog. Click on OK. So here we have deleted corresponding order from Web API method. Let's execute this select start statement again. So here we have deleted order with ID 1. Let's check that inside this details table. That's it. Thanks for watching this whole Angular 7 project development. We have discussed all about Master Detail CRUD Operations in Angular 7 with ASP.NET Web API and Entity Framework. You can download the whole project source code with SQL script from the link given below in video description. If you have any issues while developing this application, let me know in comment box below. You can support my tutorials like this through PayPal donation. I have given the link in video description. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel CodAffection. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.